Hey Pascal, this is Panther Nation. I'm Connor Hibbett. No Gage Laswell this weekend. Hope you guys have been catching up with some sports over the winter break. I hope you guys had a great break. I know I did. I went to go see my grandparents. Had a great time over there. Came back, watched a little bit of Bowl Mania. I watched my LSU Tigers losing a very close game to Notre Dame. But I also saw some great games like Boston College and Iowa, Arizona, Purdue, and the playoffs. UCF, Auburn, there were a lot of great games. Michigan, South Carolina, I can go on and on. But a lot of great games. But how about the boys varsity this year? 17-6 overall, 3-1 in district. They're coming off a tough loss to North Crowley, 66-30. But I heard that North Crowley was shooting the lights out of the ball. So, I mean, that stuff's going to happen in basketball. As we know, the last undefeated team in basketball or the regular season was Wichita State back in the 2013-2014 season. And then, of course, Kentucky did it again into the 2014-2015 season. So, but it's not going to happen too often. Girls basketball, they're 3-13, 0-3 in district, coming off a 57-27 loss to Mansfield. But you know what? Hey, we have an excuse, okay? We have a very tough district, so don't give the girls heck. Because I know I can't go out there and do much better. I haven't played basketball in a long time. That's why I'm doing this radio show, because I can't play. I can only talk. So, wish the girls luck. Hopefully they can really turn it around. You know, the football team, you know, they were 0-12, but they scored some points in their last game. They scored 21 points. Yeah, they gave up a little bit, but that's going to happen. You're going to have those type of games. And you can't say anything. You got to keep on playing. And that's what the girls are showing. I know that our girls team will put up a lot of effort. I know all the Pascal teams put up a lot of effort. Even the football team did. I don't care what their record shows. Heart's one thing, but scores can be one thing, but heart's another thing. So, I mean, you got to give a team credit if they're playing their all out there. You can't just say, you guys lost. You got to look at the overall aspect. You know, did they give it their all? Did they show a lot of competitiveness out there? And that's what we're seeing with Pascal Sports. They always show a lot of competitiveness. And obviously, we're always one of the smarter teams out there. So, college basketball, the rankings currently right now, Villanova on top at number 1, West Virginia at number 2, Virginia follows at number 3, Michigan State at number 4, Purdue, surprisingly, at number 5, and Wichita State. Wichita State and Purdue are tied at number 5. Duke at number 7. Duke's been an inconsistent team this year. I know we'd probably like to see that. If you're not a Duke fan, you know they're probably like the Yankees. You either love them or you hate them. So, Texas Tech at number 8, Oklahoma at number 9, and Xavier at number 10. Villanova coming off a great 24-point win against 10th-ranked Xavier at home. Very impressive. They beat Villanova's beat some pretty good teams this year. Gonzaga by 16 points, Tennessee by 9, Western Kentucky, yeah, they're pretty good actually, by 8, and Marquette by 10. Hey, look, this Western Kentucky team, I'm telling you, I think they're an NCAA tournament team. This team, they're 11-5 overall, okay, but they have lost to Villanova only by 8. They beat Purdue, Purdue only has 2 losses, one of which is against Western Kentucky. Western Kentucky also beat SMU by 2 points. They lost at Wisconsin by 1. I think this team's a legit team. Yeah, their strength of schedule is one thing, but as we've seen this year, that doesn't necessarily mean anything, like UCF beating Auburn. I'll get to that later. But they have a pretty good guard, Darius Thompson, 6'3", 185, senior out of Memphis, Tennessee, averaging 36.8 minutes per game, most on the team, averaging 15.2 points per game and 5.1 assists per game, and to go with that, 4.6 rebounds per game. And he just had a triple-double against Marshall in most current win on January 6th. I like this team a lot. I think this team's a legit team. I really think they could really make a run if they make it to the tournament, very similar to some teams in the past, like Middle Tennessee did last year in their surprising win over at Minnesota. I like this team to pull up some upsets this year. Number 2, West Virginia. They're on a 15-game winning streak. Only loss was to A&M, which was the first game of the season. And if you follow college basketball, A&M is now 0-4 in conference. But this West Virginia team on a 15-game winning streak. 325 turnovers forced, good for 3rd in the nation, 2nd best in turnover margin. That's what we know them by, is Press Virginia. How about those Press Virginia Mountaineers? They're really doing it on the defensive end. They got some real good players out there, real good athletes, and man, do they press. They press the whole entire game, very similar to the Louisville Cardinals when they won a championship a few years ago. So this team might make another run like they did last year in the tournament, but we'll see. Virginia, the best defensive team in the nation, 15-1. Only loss was to guess who? West Virginia. And won a game earlier this season against Wisconsin, scoring only 49 points. In most cases, if you score only 49 points, you're gonna get beat pretty good, but not in this game. They actually won this game by scoring 49 points. They won 49-37. Third in the nation in fewest turnovers, 13th in the nation in fewest fouls, and they're playing NC State on Sunday. So if you don't want to watch the NFL playoffs and want to watch college basketball, NC State's coming off an impressive win against Duke, so I suggest you might want to watch NC State and Virginia to see if maybe NC State can pull off an upset there. Number 4 in the nation's Michigan State, and this has been an interesting team all season. They lost their second game of the season to Duke, but they're 16-2 overall, third in the Big Ten, coming off a loss to Ohio State, actually coming off a win to Rutgers in overtime at home last night, but previously had a loss to Ohio State. That was a game that their coach, Tom Izzo, Michigan State's coach, he thinks that the Buckeyes played awfully well, but that's quoted. But Tom Izzo is like the Nick Saban. Nick Saban's the head coach of Alabama football. He is like the Nick Saban of college basketball. Very strict, very hard-headed. He likes things his way, but he's a very good coach, and he gets his team ready and prepared. What more can you ask for? Third in the nation third in Big Ten, 16-2, fourth in the nation. For a while, we thought they were the best team in the country. Then, of course, they lost to Ohio State, who's actually 4-0 in conference play, good for second in the Big Ten, only behind Purdue. I think the Big Ten is probably the best conference in college basketball right now. I think they are actually better than the Big 12. That's just my opinion. But I've seen some Big 12 teams that they're run-and-gun teams. They shoot the ball very well, but when it comes to the defensive end, besides West Virginia, you can throw in Texas in there. TCU's defense used to be legit the last few years, but their offense was kind of lagging. But this year it's their offense that's really good, and their defense is kind of lagging. So, things change, but I think this year the Big Ten is the best conference right now. Things change in college basketball. I mean, these guys play 30 regular season games, and they play a conference tournament, and then if they're good enough, they make it to the big dance. So we'll see who will be dancing in the end. Number 5, Purdue, and then 5th-ranked Purdue. First in the Big Ten, 16-2 overall. They lost to Western Kentucky, and then beat Arizona. Also beat Louisville by 9 at home. Louisville has not won a true road game this season, though, losing to Purdue, Kentucky, and Clemson. And speaking of Clemson, they're a team on the rise this year, 14-1, only lost to Temple. Purdue just beat Michigan at Michigan 70. A few days ago, they beat Michigan. Actually, several days ago, they beat Michigan 70-69 in the Chrysler Coliseum at Michigan. That's like their home. That's their home floors, and their Coliseum's called the Chrysler Coliseum. That's their first win there since 2011, so it's been a little while. Yeah, and then Wichita State, who's also ranked 5th in the country, 13-2, tied for first with Cincinnati in the AAC. They used to be, although Wichita State used to be in the Missouri Valley Conference, they had finished in that conference first, in that conference for the last 4 years. And then, of course, they moved to the American Athletic Conference this year for better competition and recognition as well as recruits. But Wichita State's a pretty legit team, as we know them to be. They lost to Notre Dame by 1 point and OU by 8. And they're playing ECU tonight. So good luck to the Shockers. In fact, I made a visit up to Wichita State over Thanksgiving break. I really like that campus. I like the people over there. I think they got some really nice people over there, and I really think that their basketball program is one of the best in the nation. I think that their sports program over there, the sports management and broadcasting, is one of the best in the nation. So how can you go wrong with that, right? 7th-ranked Duke in the nation, 14-2 overall, 9th in the ACC. Did beat Michigan State by 7 earlier this season on November 14th. But here's something interesting, guys. Against Power 5, they beat Texas 87 to 78. They beat Florida 87 to 84. They beat Indiana by 10, 91-81. Lost to Boston College 89 to 84. Beat Florida State 100 to 93. Lost to NC State 96 to 85. And then they beat Pittsburgh, beat Pittsburgh 87 to 52. Pittsburgh is actually one of only 3 Power 5 teams currently in college basketball that have a losing record. Those teams include Pittsburgh, Cal, and one other, and I'm about to look at that stat. But there's not too many teams right now with a losing record in college basketball because of the strength of schedule. So, I mean, when you don't have that tough of a schedule, you're probably not going to lose, especially when you're playing teams who are in a lesser conference. It's going to go pretty well for you. I don't care how good or bad you are in your conference in the Power 5. Your conference, there's a reason why they call it the Power 5. It's because they're more powerful. And when you play a team that's just not as strong as you, not as physical, not as fast, it's just going to work out pretty well for you. And so, this Duke team is very young, very athletic, 14 players, only one senior. The rest are only 14 players, one senior, and only 2 juniors. The rest are freshmen and sophomore. No current players, though, from North Carolina. This team does struggle in 2 road games, or 1 and 2, this season so far. So we'll see what that brings over the course of the season. The other team that I was going to say earlier that is currently below 500 in Power 5 play, among the Power 5 teams, is Vanderbilt. It's Vanderbilt, Cal, and Pittsburgh. Those are your 3 teams in the Power 5 conferences. Among the Power 5 teams who are below 500. There's a handful of teams who are at 500. But Texas Tech ranked 8th, 14-2 overall. A little bit of a surprise team this year. They've been one of the surprise teams this year with Purdue and even Oklahoma, because they got a freshman stud this year who's really brought up their team. He's been a big surprise this year. Trae Young, I will get to him just in a sec, I promise you guys, who are really into Oklahoma basketball. I know I got one friend out there who probably is one of the bigger fans of Trae Young in the whole nation, knowing him. This Texas Tech team was on an 8-game winning streak before their loss to Oklahoma, and in that streak included a 12-point win at Kansas on January 1st. That was the 3rd loss for Kansas at home this season. Not too often that we see the Kansas Jayhawks lose at home. They're usually pretty good at home. Allen Fieldhouse is the name of their Coliseum, in case anyone ever asks you, or if you hear the name, you're going to be like, oh yeah, Kansas. Texas Tech plays number 2 West Virginia on Saturday at 1 p.m. Central. But what's interesting is, according to the matchup predictor, they're playing at Texas Tech. They're playing at home. West Virginia only has a 25% chance of winning. So I think West Virginia is winning. But, I mean, when you play defense like West Virginia does, you really separate yourself from other teams. Number 9 in the nation, the Oklahoma Sooners, 13-2, second in Big 12. Trae Young. Okay, that sums up them. We'll move to Xavier. No, I'm kidding. Trae Young is an incredible athlete, a very good player. In fact, a lot of people say that he reminds other people of Steph Curry, and Steph Curry actually has said he's a very good player as well. They beat Northwestern State earlier this year on December 19th, Tuesday, December 19th. They won that game 105-68. Freshman star Trae Young became the first player in 2 decades to have a 20-point, 20-assist game, while tying the NCAA record with 22 assists in a single game. And that game was just an incredible game for him. 22 assists tied the Big 12 conference record, but it broke the Big 12 conference record, and it tied the NCAA record. But listen to this, guys. They scored 105 points in that game. And Trae Young scored 26 points for the game, but he had to do with 76 of the total of the 105 total points, with the 22 assists included in that. Very, very impressive. Number 10 ranked Xavier Musketeers, the 3 lost Musketeers instead of 3 Musketeers. The 3 lost Musketeers started the season 15-1 and have lost their last 2 games by combined 33 points, both on the road at Providence and then, of course, Villanova. Lost last night to Villanova, Wasn't a pretty game for Xavier, guys. They had 15 turnovers, and Villanova had 18 points off of those turnovers. Villanova shot 38.6 from behind the arc and had 36 points from behind the arc. Just absolutely incredible shooting by the Villanova Wildcats. And they also scored 15 points in the first 4.5 minutes, roughly, of the second half to really expand their lead in that game. So another dominating performance from the Villanova Wildcats, and they just continue to impress as what they've done the last few years. Now, how about college football this year? It's been an up and down season for a lot of teams, but a lot of teams end their seasons well. They end them with great bowl wins, and then some of them don't end them well. And then some of them just are surprise teams, and then some of those teams are just 6-6 teams that are just happy to be out there. But I'll start off with the playoffs from the bowl season, because I know you guys probably watch those a little bit. And I'm sure if you are not particularly Alabama fans, you were probably pulling for Clemson, and probably pulling for Oklahoma, since you probably didn't want the SEC to be the king again in college football. Now, of course, if you were really interested in the whole bowl mania, you would probably claim that the Big Ten is the king of college football. Well, whoever you think is the king and queen and prince and whatever and princess, I can tell you that the SEC is probably the best conference in football, just because the way they play and the way they beat up on each other over the course of the season. Big Ten's probably at second, ACC's in third, Big 12's in fourth, and Pac-12 is last among the Power 5. But anyways, guys, that's my opinion. But if you want to argue with me later this school year about that, you sure can. The Rose Bowl game presented by Northwestern Mutual. Number 3, Georgia played number 2, Oklahoma. Oklahoma actually at one time had a 17-point lead, and then an interesting squib kick at the end of the first half kind of changed things, changed momentum. Georgia ended up kicking a long field goal at the end of the game, or at the end of the first half. So it really changed momentum. Rodrigo Blankenship ended up kicking that field goal, and he actually had some long field goals this season, including one in the national championship game. But Georgia ended up winning this game 54-48 in 2 overtimes. The second half really belonged to the Georgia Bulldogs. They absolutely just couldn't be stopped with the running game. Oklahoma could not tackle. Some pretty bad tackling by Oklahoma could have prevented some long touchdown runs. But the Georgia defense did an extremely good job in the second half against the Baker Mayfield offense in Oklahoma. They really did a good job keeping him in check. In fact, they really shut him down the second half. The first half, they couldn't stop them, but the second half, they did an incredible job. Oklahoma had a grand total of 14 points the second half, 7 of which was a fumble return by Stephen Parker. In fact, that was only the 3rd touchdown the Oklahoma defense scored all season. They actually had one the game before against TCU in the Big 12 championship game, and then they had one against Tulane by Parnell Motley, had a 77-yard interception return in the Tulane game earlier this season for the Oklahoma Sooners. But that was a very interesting game in the Rose Bowl game. It was really back and forth, and in the second half, Georgia just completely dominated. They scored a touchdown with less than a minute left to tie the game. With the Oklahoma forced turnover, they scored with about 6.5 minutes to go. That put them up by 7. Of course, they made the extra point. Not too many teams miss extra points unless your name's LSU. And I'm sure some other teams don't have that great of kickers. But if there aren't any, let me know. But Georgia went down and scored with less than a minute left. Then they held Baker Mayfield once again around midfield. And then that was basically it. Went to overtime, and Georgia blocked a field goal attempt by Oklahoma, and then Georgia had a 27-yard run for a touchdown, which gave them the 54-48 win. Of course, they didn't need to kick the extra point. That pretty much sums up that game, but if you're an SEC fan, you're probably really happy with that result. The All-State Sugar Bowl, Alabama versus Clemson. A lot of y'all probably picked Clemson to win this game, considering the two teams and how they've really performed this year, especially with Alabama not playing well against the good teams. And while Clemson's really been impressive the last few weeks of the season, especially, we have a really different team since the Syracuse loss. Of course, some of y'all, if y'all watched that game, their quarterback went out, and so Kelly Bryant didn't play a lot in that game, and so it was kind of banged up. But Alabama beat Clemson 24-6. Clemson had a grand total of 188 yards, which was 260 yards below their season average. Hunter Renfrow, a Clemson wide receiver, was held to 31 yards on 5 catches. This guy is usually known as the Tide Killer, but he's had 4 touchdown catches in the last 2 national championships, including last year's amazing catch at the end. But that was an amazing pick play by Clemson, so good call, Clemson, because, well, I know you guys want to beat Alabama, but I think everybody wanted you to beat Alabama too, which is why the flag was not thrown, in my opinion. That's my opinion. Clemson looked at this game to show that they were the new king. That's what ESPN says. That's not what I believe. Okay, Alabama, let's get things straight here, guys. 2009, they won it all. 2010, they did not win it all. 2011, they won it all. 2012, they won it all. 2013, they were ranked number 1 until they played Auburn with the kick 6 game. And then Auburn played Florida State in the game that Florida State pulled out at the end in the national championship. So they did not win it all that year, but they were ranked number 1 most of the year. 2014, ranked number 1 most of the year, lost to Ohio State. 2015, ranked number 1 the whole way through, and they beat Clemson in the national championship. 2016, not this past season, but last year, they were ranked number 1 all the way through the season, lost to Clemson with the pick play at the end. That's my opinion. 2017, last week, they were ranked number 1 most of the season, lost to Auburn, got into the playoffs over Ohio State, finished on top. That's what a king is. And so let's just say, guys, this past week, if you want to say, Clemson beats Alabama. Okay, so Clemson let's just say Clemson wins a national championship against Georgia. So Clemson's won the last 2 national championships. But what have they done before that? 2014, they had a great finish to the season. They beat Oklahoma 40-6 in their bowl game. Shut down the Oklahoma offense in that bowl game. Okay, great for them, but that doesn't make him a king. Okay, 2 years, that makes him defending national champions. That makes him maybe number 1 for a few years. But that's not a king of college football until you do what Alabama's done. That's my opinion. So for those of you who are just tired of the SEC and Alabama, don't start making up these news stories because a lot of them will not be true, okay? So just hold your footballs for a sec, okay? Just let Alabama prove who they are, and if Clemson wants to prove it again, let them prove it for 8 straight years. Then they'll be king if they do that. If they do that. Other stuff and the other high notes of the bowl season. Northwestern ended the season on an 8-game winning streak with a 1-point win over Kentucky, which was a great game. That was a nail-biter, especially if you ran to Bowl Mania. New Mexico State wins their first bowl game in 57 years. Last time they even played in a bowl game was 1960 Sun Bowl opponent Utah State, just like the team they played this year, Utah State, in a game that they pulled out in overtime. UCF, only unbeaten team in FBS, 13-0. And no, UCF, you're not a national championship. Yeah, billboards went up, claiming how they need to play Alabama to see who's a real champion. Alabama's a real champion. UCF, you were not invited to the playoff. And I'm sorry, playoff committee, that you only put 4 teams. Or I'm sorry, UCF, that the playoff committee only put 4 teams. I'm sorry, but you just don't belong. No, they're not the national champions in my mind. Texas ended Missouri's 6-game winning streak, but let me tell you something about that 6-game winning streak. I'm not sure if I said this on any past episodes. No teams among that 6-game winning streak had a 500 or better record. Okay, so just listen to what I'm saying. Texas was going to win that game, especially because they were playing in Houston, and it was Tom Herman's first season. He really needed to show fans that, hey, I can go 7-6. And not 6-7 for y'all. And they had a lot of good athletes, Texas, and I really thought they were just the better team. Whenever Missouri played a decent, fast, athletic team, they really got destroyed. Josh Rosen and Luke Falk did not play in their bowl games, as well as Will Grier for an injury reason, and then, of course, the West Virginia running back did not play, Justin Crawford. Utah just completely dominated the game. West Virginia scored in the last couple minutes. Got a 2-point conversion just to make the score kind of look close. 30-14 was the final score. But what's really interesting, guys, the Utah head coach, Kyle Whittingham, with Utah, he is now 11-1 in bowl games. Best winning percentage in bowl history among Power 5 coaches, among all coaches, actually. But the Marshall coach right now currently is probably looking to break that, but we'll see. But that's incredible. 11-1. He really gets his teams ready. So in the future, if you're into Bowl Mania, depending on who Utah's playing, unless it's Alabama or Clemson, the queen, not king, queen of college football, if you want to put it like that, If they're playing those teams, maybe they wouldn't win, but we'll see. My point is, Kyle Whittingham really does a great job of getting his team ready and prepared for bowl games. Because, guys, a lot of the bowl games outside the playoffs and the national championship, it's just going out there and just seeing who's motivated, who's ready to play, who's not ready to play. Because it's really hard to get guys focused 2 to 3 weeks after a season's ended. It's really amazing how that comes to work, but it's incredible how it works. It's really amazing how teams will not be ready to play. The NFL playoffs are already started, but including the wild card, I mean. But this coming week on Saturday, Atlanta at Philadelphia. Now, of course, guys, most of the season, Philadelphia Eagles have been the team to beat. They're like the New England this year, just for the season. Okay, they're not the new king of the NFL either. Okay, but they're without Carson Wentz, their quarterback. It's funny is this is the first time that a road team has been favored to win in this position in the NFL playoffs. The Atlanta Falcons are favored by 3 currently. The Eagles, if they want to win this game, they're really going to have to rely on their fast and strong defense and their running back, Blount. But I really think that Devontae Freeman, Matt Ryan, Julio Jones will really get it going for the Atlanta Falcons. I like for Atlanta to win a close one, probably something like 20-17. I think it's going to be lower scoring because I think the Philadelphia defense will really step it up. They're going to be at home. It's an outdoor stadium. It's kind of up north. It's going to be cold. It might even be snowing. I don't know right now, but I know that no matter what kind of weather it is, it's probably not going to be the weather that Atlanta Falcons are going to want to play in. Tennessee at New England. New England guys, their coach, Belichick, he's going to have his team ready. He's like the Nick Saban, of what I said earlier. Nick Saban is the head coach of Alabama football and stuff like that. But he's like the Nick Saban of the NFL. He gets his team ready, and good luck beating him, especially when it's a big game like this. Tennessee at New England, I like for New England to win this game pretty decently. Haven't lost in a month exactly. It's actually been a month on this day exactly. They lost on December 11th. To Miami. So I like for New England to get the job done here. It's probably going to be an ugly game. It's not going to be a game you're probably going to want to watch. That game will also be on Saturday. But Tennessee coming off a great come-from-behind victory against KC last weekend. So, I mean, they'll obviously be motivated to play. Okay, this is a big game. They're going to want to win this game. But I think New England's, they're really going to have their number in this game. I think New England's just the better team. It's not going to be a pretty game if you're a Tennessee fan especially. I think Pittsburgh's going to beat Jacksonville at home on Sunday, this coming Sunday. Jacksonville's defense is one of the better ones in the NFL, but I think Pittsburgh's just the better team. And again, the weather is not going to be favoring the road team in this case, and it's going to be playing at Pittsburgh. Everything about this game tells me Pittsburgh. And really, guys, Pittsburgh should have beat New England a few weeks ago. And if you watch that game, you would believe me. But they didn't, and New England's the better team, and they won the close game. That's what the better teams do. The better teams win the close games. But I think this game won't even be that close, very similar to the Tennessee-New England game. I think Pittsburgh wins this game by a couple of touchdowns. It might be lower scoring, but they'll still win by a couple of touchdowns. It will be something like 17-6 or 21 to 3, 21-6, 21-7, something like that, 21-10. But they'll win the game by 10 points, 14 points, very something like that. And then, of course, when you're talking about the NFL, and when you're talking about teams who've had a good streak, right, and teams that have not had a good history, teams that have had a good history, what about this year? What about Minnesota and New Orleans? Minnesota. They always seem to have those good teams, but they just cannot finish seasons. Look, I would feel for Minnesota if they lost this at home, but I'm a New Orleans Saints fan. I'm going to try to avoid being biased here, but I really think New Orleans might pull this one off. I think either team could win this game. I think this game's a toss-up, but it's being played at Minnesota. They'll do keep this in mind. It's in an indoor stadium. So that will really help out the New Orleans Saints because, first of all, they're used to playing indoors. Second of all, they're not used to that weather up north, even if they did play outdoors. But obviously, that's not going to really have a huge factor in this game, though I think it'd be funny is if Minnesota made their stadium cold on purpose. like with the AC, or maybe if I'm pretty sure Minnesota can open up the roof of their stadium. I think that'd be funny if they did that, just because they know that'd be a factor in the game. But I think I wouldn't be surprised whoever wins this game. But I'm just gonna stick with my Saints because I'm pulling for them. So, but I really think Minnesota will win the game. But I'll pull for the New Orleans Saints. So go Saints, and of course go Panthers as always. The varsity team this year, varsity soccer, is off to a pretty good start. They're going to be playing in a tournament tomorrow, the Brewer tournament, and then I will get you updated with soccer next week, and get as well as the girls' soccer, of course, as always. And so go Panthers, and I hope you guys have had a great break, and I hope you guys are really happy being back in school, and I hope the rest of the year goes great for you, and I'll be